Learning in Action's Heal the Divide Podinar series. Today, our guest is James Flaherty, and our topic is showing clients how to be alert and not alarmed. I'm Allison Whitmire with Learning in Action, and I'm joined by my colleague, Sarah Bush. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, good to be here.
Welcome. Thank you. Our mission at Learning in Action is to heal the divide. And what that means to us is if we can heal the divide within us, the ways in which we are divided from our essential self, then we can begin to heal the ways in which we're divided from each other. And that is why we do this series. It's why we do a lot of the things we do for free at Learning in Action, is in an effort to begin to reach this idea of healing our dividedness. So what the heck is a Podinar? If this is your first time, we're so happy for you to join us. Podinar is a word we made up. It's a combination between a podcast and webinar. It's interview style like a podcast and interactive like a webinar. Our intentions, and who knows where James and I will go in our conversation today, and intentions are to explore what coaching is, what its boundaries are, to discuss what it means to be alert and not alarmed, and how we can support our clients in being alert and not alarmed, to explore this idea, the medicine you need, the medicine you give, and what that means. And we'll be discussing what coaching for everyone, everywhere might look like, and what that might mean for us coaches. And with that, I'll give James a proper introduction. Flaherty is the founder of the coaching school New Ventures West and co-founder of Integral Leadership, LLC, and the author of the book Coaching, Evoking Excellence in Others, which is widely recognized as a seminal text in the field of coach education and is used internationally in universities and coach training institutions. He designed the professional coaching course and dozens of other programs over the past 2 decades, and he has led coaching and leadership courses involving thousands of people throughout North America, South Africa, Asia, and Europe. He has coached top executives at Fortune 500 companies and is a highly sought after speaker at meetings and conferences. So with that, James, welcome.
It is so funny. That is like being Tom Sawyer at your own funeral. You know, people reading stuff about you.
I know, it's weird.
Yeah. Hi, everybody.
Well, James, it's so lovely to have you here and to be with you today. I'm curious if you are at a cocktail party or maybe a really extended family reunion where you don't necessarily know people well, and they say, "So, tell me about yourself. What do you do?" You know, how do you describe yourself and what you do?
Well, I made up something. I made up this career because I think, like everyone, we have this giant urge somewhere deep inside of us to contribute. And all the ways I looked out into the world and saw that were already in existence didn't quite work. So I made up this thing. I'd heard this word coaching from some other people. So coaching. So by coaching, I mean, so I'm coaching, and I started a coaching school, which I'm now seeing Lynn here, my friend Lynn, who I've been seeing forever, who's also an early graduate of our school. Anyway, so started a coaching school. So by coaching, we mean a relationship between usually 2 people. And the relationship is about the client, the person being coached, being able to find out what's important for them, and then cultivate the capacity, the competency to live that out in a way that is joyful for them and meaningful for them. Because as we know, too many people are just resigned. Life is just horrible, and they have to just sort of get through it. Or too many of us are just doing things, quote, just for the money. Doesn't really mean anything to us. So coaching really fits in with what your organization is about. Our understanding of coaching is about integrating all the different parts of us. Because from our wholeness, there's ways we can know ourselves, and there's a way we can be in touch with our own resourcefulness. And that also lets us be in touch with the whole part of other people. But usually I don't give a short answer. So, I'm not good at short answers.
Okay. So what, I don't even know like how many coaching schools existed when you started New Ventures West, and like what made you want to start it and feel like there was a void in the space that needed filling?
There were 5 or 6 coaching schools, and we knew each other. And in fact, at that point, we talked about starting an alliance of all the coaching schools in existence. And we kind of sort of did, it didn't happen. So it wasn't, I never did make decisions with New Ventures West or in my career based upon commercial view. It wasn't like I saw a niche. Oh, they haven't thought about this. It wasn't that. It was that I had learned some things about how to understand how people designed their life, how they conducted their lives. And I was eager to share it with people because it, of course, had worked for me. And then I found out that there was such a thing as coach training, and started a school. And we had it going for a few years, Allison. And then this new phenomena happened in the world called certification. So then we had to go through the whole rigmarole with ICF to get certified as a school and have all the modules of the school, teach the competencies of ICF and all that stuff. The first few years, though, and I think by the time Reed got there, we may have been better. Anyway, it was a grand experiment. I don't know. Maybe there's coaches on this call who feel like you have it all worked out, and you just have to have your client sort of roll up their shirt, and you just inject them with the brilliance of coaching. For me, every time I meet somebody, it's an experiment. As in, who are you? And how do things work over there in your world? And by coming together, can we find some intelligence? Because the intelligence, the heart, really comes from the being together.
Yeah.
It isn't like I have this. I don't mean to say that this is how you have to think about it. This is just how I think about it. So it isn't like I have this big packet of stuff I'm going to just dump on you, because it's really great. It's the coaching engagement always is particular to the person.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that's my method.
And what is the thread that binds, for you anyway, every coaching engagement? Like, so the person across from you is always different, and it's always an experiment. But I'm wondering, it's an experiment to do what?
So there's a few pithy answers to that. One is that we're always after the person will be excellent at what they're setting out to do. So by excellent, we mean kind of the Aristotle version of excellence, which means virtuous. Virtuous as in bringing our best self to it. So excellent, not only that I'm meeting some standards, but I'm able to bring all of me to whatever I'm engaged in. So that's the first thing I'm always aiming at. Second is that people be self-generating. In other words, in some boarded amount of time, able to generate things on their own. They found their own inner resources. I already referenced that, but also they have connections in a wider world. So no codependency. And that they're also be able to be self-correcting. Self-correcting is different than, being self-critical, because I think since maybe we're age 7 or 8 or something, we're really good at self-criticism, but we're not so good at self-observation. Being able to notice how what's happening with me internally shows up in action, and what are the consequences of those actions in that whole looping system. And that allows us to be self-correcting. So when I stray from my values, or I stray from the kind of relationships that I want, or I stray from the internal discipline I'm trying to bring to my life or my practices, I can come back on and not wait for some disaster to awaken me again. So those 3 things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious about your observation over the many years you've been coaching about how clients' ability to access their own innate resourcefulness and their own innate reflection and self-correction have changed over time as the world gets more complex and ambiguous and chaotic.
The first step in our coaching all the time, Allison, is finding something that is, I love that you had the word essence in your description, because the first thing that as coaches, when we first meet someone, even before we start to do an intake, maybe in our first encounter with them, we are opening ourselves up to, as coaches, to find an essential positive quality about this person. The essential, we have lots of positive qualities, but there's one, here's the theory. There's one that's important right now for the person. There's one that's coming forward. And we know it's coming forward because it's connected with the coaching issue that they brought. So we're looking for their essential positive quality. And then once we have a feel for what that is, we say it to our client. And just saying it when it's accurate awakens something in them that is deeper and more grounded and more true than the personality that we've constructed or the skill set that we've built over the years. It's a returning to something that is so strong and so rooted and so energizing that is the foundation for the rest, for being excellent, self-correcting, self-generating, all of that. Mm. So then the coaching engagement can that be more than just, oh, I feel that when I'm talking to Allison. No, I know Allison from talking to her 1 hour before this and whatever it is, half an hour today, and you already know what she's like. You can see how Allison's eye is always for what's wonderful about you. You can see that she just does that. And then people want to be around her because, oh, I don't know why. And we say that she's positive or she's energetic or something. But I would say that she has the sensitivity to what's uniquely wonderful about each person. So that's great when I'm with you that I could see that. But when I go home and I'm in the middle of making dinner and 5 things are happening, I'm on a Zoom meeting while I'm supposed to be blah, 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 like you said, the complications of life. So the coaching program is about, can I establish that as a place to live from? And can I use it to inform how I act, how I interact, how I listen, how I care for other people, and how I care for the world? Mm-hmm. It's the realization of the insight, to say it in a more simple way.
I'm really appreciating what you're saying, and I don't think it's really landed on me quite the way you've said it. One of the things that has been important to me as a coach, and I thank you for your acknowledgement. One of the things that's always been important to me as a coach is that I can be my client's biggest fan. And if I can't, then I don't coach them. And I feel like so much of work environments can be about what's wrong instead of about what's right about the person, or what's good, or what's essential, or what's beautiful about the person. And I'm really appreciating your highlighting that as an integral part of coaching. It's the way I listen to what you say, it's like it's where the coaching begins. Yes. Is with what is essentially, I don't know.
Yes, essentially positive and good about
positive. Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes it's difficult or challenging for us to see it in our client, like Allison just said. Some people it's obvious, other people it's more hidden or more protected. But it's also sometimes hard for the client to see it about themselves. And we'll shuffle, we'll just say, oh, thanks for, I don't know what, thank you for the compliment. No, I'm not complimenting you. I'm not encouraging you. I'm mirroring you back to you. It's really different. Mm-hmm. It has a different effect.
And my experience of I've been coaching for 17 years now is like the importance of that has increased in my mind of my experience of my clients' reactions to being mirrored in that way has become more important. And I'm curious, do you have I'm loath to say the word method or approach or like, how do you get
how do you do that? Right.
How do you do that thing of getting that essential positive quality that wants to come forth right now?
So one thing is we have to be really grounded in our own body, because it's pretty much a body event. It's our body's way of knowing something. In other words, it isn't you said this word and I saw you interact with that person, and therefore it's not like a Sherlock Holmes, aha! I've got your essential positive quality. It isn't like that. It's more that we are sensitive and receptive to it. So when we're teaching people at New Ventures West, and the class starts with lots of everybody in the class having a coaching session with the faculty, and the faculty sees their essential positive qualities, and they see, this happened with the 20 people or so in the cohort. And I think, oh my goodness, how did you do that? Yeah, what's the magic power? So the first thing we ask people to do is just practice. Go out in the world and counteract your nervous system, because our nervous system has evolved for looking for danger. What's going to go wrong? And can't that person in the grocery line go faster? And can't they merge in traffic faster? And can't they give me fewer details and just tell me what they want to tell me, or whatever bothers us, or threatens us, or annoys us? So we have to intentionally awaken this different part of us, which is looking for, sensing what's positive and good about the person. Here's a metaphor for it. Some people on this call are old enough to get this one, and the rest of it, you'll just have to see it in a movie or imagine it. It's like being a grandparent. And your grandchild comes over, and this is the smartest person that was ever born. Madame Curie was kind of smart, Newton was smart, but you haven't seen my granddaughter. It's that openness and eagerness to be delighted by the other person.
Yes, that feels so true. That feels so true. And when you began to talk about it's like a somatic, and I don't know to use that word, but in the body experience, is it that when the coach is connecting with that positive essence of the client, is it the coach feeling it in their body when they've connected it? Is it a sense that the coach feels the client sensing it in their body? Can you speak to the somatic part?
Usually the client doesn't usually come forward with it. So it's usually the coach, we're sitting here calming ourselves, quieting our inner worries or inner chatter, getting as present as we can. Present, not only not distracted, but present in a deep way. Presence isn't yes or no. Presence has incredible depth and nuance to it. So being present with the other person. And then it's possible that it arrived. Like you foreshadowed in your question, there isn't a recipe for it. There isn't a method. Ask these two questions.
Dang, no method. There's not a checkbox for this. Yeah, that's right. Like so much of what we do, there's not a checkbox for it.
It's also sort of like going through some great museum. Like, I don't know what you think a great museum is, but say the Metropolitan in New York. And we're in the beautiful, beautiful Greek and Roman statuary. Oh, that is so gorgeous and so moving and so touching. Wow. But then we go see the Impressionists, and they're beautiful and moving, but they're so different. So what is it? What is it that has each person be uniquely astounding the way they are? So looking at art can also do it for us. What is it? What is the essence of what's going on here?
Yeah.
That carries across the form of it. But the most important part is practice.
Yeah. So Pamela is asking a question.
Okay.
How does the coach recognize it when they feel it? Like, what is it?
Yeah. So I don't know how it goes for other people, but I've done lots of work with my somatic intelligence. So somatic intelligence, as I'm sure everybody in this call knows what that means. Our body has incredible know-how, to say it that way. It has wisdom that our cognition doesn't have and our emotional facilities don't have. So the way that it works for me is I stay with the person, and like I said, I'm open to this and being sensitive to it from the moment I meet them. And then when it starts to formulate into a word, I check with myself. And I have a way of checking with myself. And I say, is that true? And my body will tell me if it's true. This is a fantastic cultivation that we can do, because we can even do it with what we say. When someone asks us a question, we can find out, is that really true? So, a simple question. Do you want to go out to dinner tonight? Sure. And then, do I really want to go out to dinner? Is it really true? It's the trouble with somatic intelligence, as you would guess, is the same trouble that emotional intelligence had, whatever it was 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. Who cares about it? Just teach me my logic. Yeah. Teach me cause and effect, and give me a good memory, and I'll be fine. Except then there are people involved. Oh, so I guess I do have to do something about the emotions. But then we're always in a situation, and our body knows things. This is not so weird, because we will find ourselves feeling drawn to people or worried about people, and we don't have a reason for it that we can think of. Just our body can tell.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a book called Power versus Force,
Yes.
It's a kind of a challenging read, I find, but it's on this. I see Henry shaking his head on this idea of like we have this intelligence within us, like literally, it's just learning how to tap into it. It's in, and this isn't this. It's not. The book breaks it down not like in a woo-woo way, but actually in a really kind of scientific way, of which actually our bodies do know. I hadn't thought about this until now, and it's a relatively recent, in the past 3, 4, 5 years for me, is that when I experience, I don't know, like when something feels true or lands, I find somatically like my lower belly relaxes. And it's like, it's like, that's it. Like whatever that is, that it's like my body's going, yes.
Yes, and if we start to pay attention, we'll notice what our body does. So it could be what Allison is saying, but you may have some other, may show up in a different way for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So,
go ahead.
Sorry, one more question, then we'll ask for questions and we'll transition a little bit. I'm curious, what's your sense of what coaching can and can't do, and like what are the boundaries of coaching?
Coaching can do anything. Coaching can turn, dark skies blue. It can turn rivers of fire. I just was listening to Can't Get Next to You by The Temptations. So if you don't know that song, you'll see the reference. Anyway, it's in there. So coaching. So for me, the coaching boundaries are twofold. One is the quality of presence and the level of experience and ability to observe and articulate on the coach side. And on the client side, their ability to be present, their readiness to be open. So readiness to be open isn't just a switch that people can throw, because we all know folks who have had such difficulty in their life. So they've had trauma of significance, or they've had some addictions along the way that have taken them pretty far from themselves and maybe even affected their nervous system. There are some other destructive ways of being and destructive habits that are so deep that almost no coaching can get to it. I always like to say almost, because there always will be somebody that can do it. I don't know how you all are about it, but I don't like having a lot of boundaries about coaching. I have to contain myself, because I often think, sure, coaching. But I found out that it is limited by the things that I just already delineated. Whatever my experience and ability to be present with this person is, their openness and readiness themselves. And as we all have found, sometimes people's desire for change and their readiness to take on what it will require don't match.
Well, let's pause here, and I'll go to Sarah first to see if there are questions for James in the chat box. And then if you have a question, you can raise your virtual hand and we'll come to you. Sarah?
Yeah, there's one from Donna. She said there's a philosophy that we cannot see in others what is not in ourselves, positive or negative. And our question is, do you think that is true in terms of seeing the positive essential quality in our clients?
Yeah, thank you. So thanks, Donna, for your question. Yes, so yeah, I'm with that slogan that we've heard. You can't see in someone else something that you haven't seen in yourself. But I've also discovered that sometimes when I'm with a client that is a deeply kind person, and they're kind in a way that I've never found myself to be, something awakens in me in being around them. So if I know myself and know the other person as a vast sea of qualities, some of which are known and are lived from and articulated, and some aren't. Anyway, being with the client can also bring it about. But part of I think what Don is pointing to is that means let's work on ourselves so I can know these qualities and get a feeling for what they're like. The important part beyond that is then be able to say what it is. It's not so helpful for the client to just say, I have this feeling that something really deep and wonderful is going on with you. Okay. Doesn't help. We have to be able to articulate it.
So we had another question come up in the chat box around any tips for getting in touch with what your body is telling you. How do you?
Yeah. So two things. One is have some body practices. So lots of us do exercise, but exercise isn't a body practice in the way I'm talking about it, because lots of us go and let our body do the exercise and we take our mind somewhere else. So a body practice is moving our body in a particular way and staying mindful at the same time.
Do you have a particular body practice that you use?
Yeah, I have. I'll say some. So one may surprise you. So I'm a Zen student, so I have a sitting practice. So people sometimes think, people who haven't done it don't understand sitting as a body practice. It's a body practice because it's all about staying with the sensations in the body and not being distracted and coming back to it over and over again, which means that over a period of time, I find ways to be with anger or boredom or oh my goodness, I have to get up from my sitting. I have to do that right now. And there's a way I find room in my body for all that to exist without my having to act on it, which means I can observe it. So that I have a Qigong practice, those of you who don't live in a place in the world where you've heard about such things. So Qigong is a branch of Chinese medicine that has to do with movement. And it's a movement that, like all of Chinese medicine, moves the energy and balances the energy. So I do that. I'm a big believer in felt sense, the wonderful term that Eugene Genlin brought to the world, whatever it was in the 90s. Felt sense is a way of describing what the body knows. And those of you who want to find out more about that, he wrote a book called Focusing, which is the practice of tuning into the body's wisdom, focusing. And then one of his students wrote a wonderful book called Focusing in Clinical Practice, which is how to cultivate the body's wisdom ourselves, and then how to have the same thing happen with our clients.
Mm-hmm.
Gorgeous book. So all that.
Yeah, love that. So if maybe we transition a little bit into our title. When we were, oh yeah. So when we first got to talking about what we wanted to talk about today, you suggested this title of, being alert and not alarmed. Can you speak to what that means?
Yeah, I mean a few things by it. The first is, I guess, a commonplace observation that there's already enough alarm in the world. So we don't have to worry about there not being enough people being on alert and high alert and even feeling in danger all the time. Being alarmed is our nervous system responding to a threat. And as maybe all of us on this call know, our nervous system is set up to do that for short periods of time. So living in an alarmed state for a long period of time does damage to us. It's one of the factors leading to PTSD, post-traumatic stress. Stress burns us out. It also, I don't have to tell you all the stuff about stress. I'm sure you already know about all the ways it makes us less intelligent, less resourceful, falling back into our habitual responses and all of that. So oftentimes people have the polarities, either be alarmed or ignore it. Like, oh, let those people worry about it. I'll just be over here doing what I like to do, what gives me pleasure, what's fun for me, or etc., what distracts me. So my view is that it's a big purpose in being a coach, or a big task of being a coach, or a big commitment in being a coach, is to be able to be alert. In other words, be sensitive, paying attention, observing, without having our nervous system churn into fear. So that takes a lot of cultivation, a lot of practice. You know, the background premise in all this is that the practices that we engage in every day keep turning us into the kind of person that we are. People have been saying that for thousands of years, and finally the scientists gave it validity by talking about the plasticity of our brain. Yes, it's good that they caught on to that, but it's been known forever that the practices forever, for the last 8,000 years, that the practices we engage in turn us into the kind of person that we are. So if you want to be patient, there's some practices that you can take on. If you want to be creative, or if you want to be a better listener and so on, but it isn't just an idea. We have to engage our body in practices. So a steady kind of presence that can stay in the middle of things. I wish I had a better memory. I would recite the Thich Nhat Hanh poem that maybe a lot of you have heard.
Yeah.
Of being someone who can be in the midst of all the terrible things that are going on in the world and not turning away.
Yeah. Yeah. Be the calm person in the boat.
Be the calm person in the boat, exactly, Allison.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing you say is in order for us to be present as coaches, and to have that presence, our presence, invite the openness and readiness and presence of our clients. We want to be developing our own practice around how we are present in situations where we might normally be alarmed. Like how do we develop a regular practice of that?
Right, exactly. And we also need the first aid practices that help us self-regulate. So the sensitivity to notice, oh, I'm starting to trip over into alarm. Let me do the things that help me self-regulate. So the one that probably all of us on the call know about is breathing, does it? Slowing our breathing, extending our exhale, does it? Also, our feet are so smart. Our feet have so many proprioceptors on them that when we pay attention to our feet, not just think about our feet, but feel a sensation of our feet on the floor or the ground or wherever we are, that will also help us self-regulate. And also, sensing the inside of our body will do it. This might be one that you don't know, maybe you haven't heard of. But if you start to feel the inside of your arms. That will return us to a deeper presence.
Mhm.
So yes, both long-term background way of cultivating, but also in the moment, kind of what I call first aid. It helps us self-regulate. I think we need both.
So sometimes I find that coaches like to be very specific. So if you want a very specific breathing exercise, it's one like Dr. Andrew Weil does. It's called the 4-7-8 exercise. And so maybe Sarah can find it and put it in the chat box for you.
Yeah.
We have a write-up on it, and we have a video doing it. So if you're the kind of person that likes to have specifics, we can get you that. So how do we support our clients? You know, we've talked about how we as coaches develop our own ability to be alert and not alarmed, to be expand our ability to be with what is. How do we support our clients in doing that and in a coaching context?
Yep. So one is we can invite them into the sort of practices that we are doing ourselves. I find myself, I don't know how it goes for anyone else on this call, but I find myself telling clients about self-regulation, almost everyone, about how to do that, because not everyone's learned it.
Well, I don't know any of my clients have learned it.
No, it's not on their curriculum at business school. Maybe it is now, but it wasn't for a long time. So that's one thing. The other thing is that really helps, Allison, is clarifying what the client is really committed to.
Say more about that. How does that relate to self-regulating?
Yeah, like why would I regulate? You know, because I'm committed. So I don't know how many of you are in the call who are parents, but if you have children, they will fall down, they will bleed, they will, you know, things will happen. So that's the moment. Why self-regulate? At that moment, I could just freak out. I could just start screaming, they're bleeding, oh, they're dying, oh no, oh, I loved you, but now you're gone. Or I could regulate myself so that I could be helpful. So there has to be a how come. Why would I take that extra step? Why would I cultivate myself to be someone? Why would I work on myself and build the skills and the qualities to be alert? Why? For the sake of what? And that's the key question, I think, in the middle of everything is for the sake of what is this? I find it important with every coaching client to get to a pretty bedrock place for the sake of what am I doing this?
For the sake of what? So what I'm hearing you, just to anchor what I'm hearing you say, like a pivotal initial part of your coaching is finding that essential positive quality, that essential essence. And then a next part is like to do what, or in commitment to what?
Yes.
Like what's at stake? What's it worth?
Yes, and commitment is, if we really study commitment, it's more mysterious than we think it is at first. Because lots of people think it's just making up my mind and being determined. It isn't that. Because commitment isn't just me. It's commitment has to do with who I'm living with, the communities I'm in, what the world needs now, what the world is calling for now, all of that. And I'll just say, I could probably like you, Allison, and other people in this call, I could go on for a couple of days here talking about the commitment, but let me just say one small thing about it, is that if you study the big commitments that you have in your life, like Stacy, my wife, and I had our 44th wedding anniversary last Friday. So we're now in year 45 or something. Oh my God. So did I make up my mind one day to be committed to Stacy? Like, okay, let's see. Cute, smart, good with money, make a list. Oh, she's a word. I guess I'll get committed to her. No, I just found that I was. Commitment is mysterious in the sense that usually the ones that are the foundations of our life, we find ourselves committed rather than we make ourselves committed.
Mm-hmm.
We have to pay attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be surprising.
Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing you say is that as we introduce these ideas about how to support the client in self-regulating, it can be useful to have the encouragement be, what are you committed to and what's that worth to you? And you need these self-regulation practices to do that. But something I've heard coaches say before or ask about is like, wait a minute, whose agenda is it that my client meditate? Whose agenda is it that they find, somatic exercises, that they self-regulate? Because one way of viewing is, no, actually, that's my client isn't asking for that. And so is it my agenda to introduce something like that? Could you speak to that?
Yeah. My understanding is that I appreciate that it's not my job, like I said, to have a whole pile of things that I'm just going to pour on the client, no matter what they say. So yes, clients aren't. Anyway, I don't think of myself as a menu, and coaches just pick, clients just pick. Oh, I want this, I want that, I don't want that part. To me, it's a partnership. So the client says, this is what I'm after. I never can say what's important for the client. This is the part that only they know. So when we talk about people's inner wisdom and inner knowing, it's not that they have all the skills in the world. We don't have the inner knowing of how to fly an airplane or how to do brain surgery. We don't have that. But we do have, when we calm ourselves down a bit and step back and take the time, we can discover what's important for us. So this is what's important for you. You, as the client, you want to get less reactive in meetings, because you notice, especially when that person at the end always sits at the end of the table, asks questions, I just lose my place, lose my intelligence. Okay, that's what you want to work on. So I don't think it's my job as a coach, although there are different views about this, to ask, so what do you think you should do about that? Because I think they could stay at home on a pad of paper and write down, what do you think I should do about that? So I think my task as a coach is to have potential paths of practice the client can take up to be someone who can respond in a new way. I think that's like the metaphor I've always used, Allison, is like, if I show up for piano lessons and the piano teacher says, oh, how do you think you should learn this? I would say, that's why I'm here. You can't, I do really want to learn, and I'm willing to put in the time, and I'm willing to give up other things in order to do this. But the path of this is unknown to me. So I think, as one of the ways of understanding that I understand what coaches are holders of traditions. Like I'm in the tradition of, and I've learned about and studied, and what I've been doing with my life is learning about what we're just saying, God's intelligence. You probably haven't done that. You've been busy raising your family and running your business or whatever you've been doing. So that's okay. So here's a tradition by meeting me or meeting Karen or Martha or whoever, or Raph or Rafe, whoever here, is a chance to access that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So James, we have about 5 minutes left in our
minutes.
time before we need to draw it to a close. How did that happen? And I wanted to give you some choices. We could continue talking about alert and not alarmed. We could talk about the medicine you need and the medicine you give. We could talk about coaching everyone everywhere. We could open it up for questions.
I don't have a preference. I'm just wondering what if anything that we brought up our group wants to hear more about. So
yeah, I see Joe's got a hand up. Joe, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, so with regard to alert versus alarmed, my own personal experience with it, and then also seeing it in clients, is that we think being alarmed is normal, that it's
Right.
a normal state, so we don't even recognize it. And I have a business owner client I'm working right now, and it showed up in his profile and through the words and stuff he uses. He thinks that that's normal. So did I. Right. And for myself, it goes back to survival during childhood. Right. It was a survival mechanism. So we think that's the normal state. Right. So I'm just curious as to what you've seen, James, around that, with where people's like, oh, yes, I'm supposed to be alarmed.
Well, exactly. And living in a way that expresses the alarm and keeps me alarmed. Yeah.
Like I need to be alarmed.
Yes, because people, I think, Joe, one of the things that happens is people confuse being alarmed with caring about something. I have to be really upset, and if I'm not upset, it means I don't care. No, if you really care, then be skillful in how you're responding, not be in a particular emotional state. So emotional states either facilitate certain actions, as we all know. So what is the emotional state they'll be in? They'll let you be a great business owner. Take wonderful care of your customers, your employees, look ahead to the future, look at numbers without freaking out, so you can have a skillful response.
That's a great distinction between being alarmed and caring. And then my last observation, I know for me, is I unwound and continue to unwind, the alarm state is it's wildly disorienting, right? Because you initially, you feel so much different, and it's a much better state to be in, but it is very disorienting during that process, that transition, so to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, you brought such good points, Joe. So the kind of pressure that we feel, when that starts to drop, some of us can start to wonder, then who am I? How am I going to know what to do? I'm just going to hang out and drink pina coladas, on the terrace if I don't feel this pressure and this alarm. No, because it wasn't the pressure and the alarm that was ever doing it anyway. It was you.
So I'm hearing that part of the coach's role is a certain amount of education. like normally we don't think of, but yeah, I do think that there's a certain amount of education that there is actually another way to be in the world.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
Possible. Yeah.
Okay, we have time for maybe one more question. Julia, you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
There we go. Hi.
Hi.
I find what you just talked about there, James, very provocative in terms of the direction of where coaching is going, and this whole idea of non-directive coaching, as saying that when a client asks, "What should you do? What should I do about it?" And that non-directive would say, it is that question, "What should you do about it?" And yet, what you're saying is we still serve. We as coaches can potentially serve a role as sort of a consultant partner, because that's what I'm hearing you're saying, is that we offer practices and processes, and we're process experts, but we're not content experts. So I just wanted to comment on that, as it's provocative to think about where we're going as coaches to be in service to what's within them, and yet also offering practices to them.
I think thank you for your question, because I know that this is an important one, and people have been trained in particular ways of coaching that would make this a mortal sin. you'd be burned at the stake for doing this. You can hear my Catholicism coming in here. Yeah. Well, we're in service of the person all the time. That's the agenda. They bring the agenda. Then how do I get there? So I think there's always two parts of how do I get there. One is, what are the skills, the competencies? Yeah. But also, who do I have to be? And that's often left out. My view is that people succeed or fail not because they know more than the other person, usually. There's probably exceptions, but usually, but because of how they're being in the situation. We've all had bosses that it wasn't because that person was the smartest person you've ever met, but it just, when we were around them, we felt supported, we felt safe, we felt we could be open. That way of being. I've never had a client answer the question, if I ask them, what do you think you should do? Say, I think I should shift my way of being. I've never heard, maybe you've had that. I've never had that. It's a realm that people don't know to ask. And it's not that there's anything wrong with them. It's just they haven't encountered that.
Thank you so much. And how I'm hearing that, and here in closing is there are things, like you said, that clients don't know to ask. They just don't know, and we know, and they're not likely to ask. How do I, should I be different? Yeah.
Yes, right.
Thank you.
Adam Grant is also good on this, Julia. If you want to study him, he's really good at us discovering and embracing ignorance. Oh boy, I don't know this. How fabulous! He's even worse than that, Julia. He says, "Oh boy, I'm wrong. Oh, I'm so glad I'm wrong."
That's so great. Well, we're just gonna come to a close here. James, anything you want to say about this 12-week intensive you have coming up?
So Russ Hudson and I are friends. Russ is a world expert in the Enneagram. Some of you know what the Enneagram is. It's a way of understanding, simply said, it's a way of understanding personality and what gets in the way of us knowing ourselves. So the medicine you need is, what is it that will put me in, what will let me be in touch with and live from essence of who I really am? What is the particular formulation of activities, relationships, and so on that will do that? It's particular to the individual person. And then each of us, of course, of course to me, maybe not. Anyway, each of us has a particular gift that we bring. You may have noticed this in your relationships with people. Something gets healed in your relationships with people because you're there. Because you bring forgiveness, or you bring spaciousness, or you bring fun, or whatever it is that you bring. So finding out what the medicine is that we are is freeing and joyful, relaxing.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds fantastic. So if you want to learn more about that, you can see New Ventures West program, Enneagram, Integral Coaching. You can find out more about that there. We'll also send information out in our follow-up email. If you want to connect with James, here's the information where you can do that on LinkedIn or at his email address. If you want to know a little bit of what's going on with us at Learning in Action, we have a dip your toe in the water on demand course called the Neuroscience of We, which is about the embodiment of relationship. This is a quick 3-hour on-demand course. If you want to enjoy one of our live courses, we have one coming up on July 14th. It is a 2-session, 3-hour course live about how to integrate mindfulness into coaching. And it gets at this question, something I discovered not long ago, is that my clients were showing up for coaching and they weren't really ready, and they weren't really open, and they weren't really curious. And I began to kind of organically integrate some mindfulness techniques into coaching. And so I went on to get a mindfulness meditation certification, teacher certification. And you don't have to. So if you want to enjoy or join our 2-session class on that, you can learn more there, learninginaction.teachable.com/courses. And of course, we have an EQ certification coming up. You've heard a couple of people today talk about the EQ profile and their use with clients. If you want to take that full meal deal, there's a whole 49 CCEUs. It's a 12-week class, so we'd love for you to join us. And thank you so much, James, for joining us today. This was so much fun, and I'm so glad there is you in the world.
Thank you, Alison. I'm glad you're in the world, and everybody else. And keep doing your good work, everyone. Don't let anything stop you from doing your good work.